What's going on, everyone? LeoBlade13 here, bringing you our first deck profile in quite some time. I actually had some free time tonight, so I decided to sit down and build a new deck. This is one that I have been wanting to build for so long, and finally excited to build it and bring it to you guys. So, disclaimer, I just finished building it, haven't had time to test it yet, but I think it's going to do about what I want it to. Probably just a few minor changes here and there, but I think overall it's going to do what it needs to. So the reason I did decide to record this is because I got on my computer and saw that I could actually get onto YouTube, so figured take advantage of this and get this uploaded while I can. So clearly, by the banners and the title, this is a black, green, blue control deck, more focused on limiting your opponent's hand. This is something that I did want to build because I really like the card Despair, and after seeing all of the discarding effects coming out in Oath of Blood, I felt like I would get like a kind of beta deck going. So that way I didn't have as many changes to make when Oath of Blood came out. So anyways, starting with the black cards that we have. First up, we got 4 Crowd Surfers. I know I've done black deck profiles in the past, and this one has always made it in there just because it's a really nice 2/2/2 with a Fort Burst, and I think this is just a really solid card. Until black gets some better Fort Burst creatures, I think that one is going to stay. And then we've got 2 Cavaliers. I really like this card because of its potential to recycle your creatures, with Flesh Shredder being the main objective in this deck. If it gets destroyed, I do want to be able to bring it back so I can get its effect off again. So Cavaliers in here just in case it ends up getting destroyed, and then I can easily grab it back, summon it again, make my opponent discard another 2 cards. So that is his purpose. Also, it can grab me back anything else that I need, like the green Mischievous Sprites. Once we get to them for destroying ambushes, if my opponent resets another ambush, I can just summon or grab it from discard and add it back. Next up, I'm playing 2 Sinister Festering Stringmans. I think this is a really cool card just because I'm not playing a lot of draw in here, and so I always want at least something to summon, so I felt like he would be a perfect choice just because he always goes back to your hand when he's destroyed, and I think I needed something in my hand consistently, so that's why he ended up in here. And his 4/2 isn't too bad. He's one of the stronger attackers in this deck. And then moving on to the main card, we got Flesh Shredder. So, like I said earlier, his effect is when he's summoned, your opponent has to discard 2 cards. So they do get to choose what cards it is. However, it does set them back in resources, and the more you can summon this, the harder of a time they're going to have. He does also have some pretty decent stats, sitting at 3/4. So, pretty nice card, and your opponent's really going to hate it. So following that up, we've got 2 Bloody Baroness. This is one of my personal favorite cards, and it is, I think, the strongest card in this deck when it's blue Dragocross, sitting at 7/6, I believe. But this also just negs your opponent, being able to destroy one of their creatures just sets them back. And I think it's a really awesome card. I do have the alt arts coming soon. I'm sad that I am not able to show them off to you. Moving on to the spells for the black, I've got 2 to spare. I did initially have 4 in here, but I needed to make room for some other stuff, and as much as it pained me to do it, I had to take 2 copies out. And this is one of my favorite artworks, so I'm really excited to be using a deck with both this and Bloody Baroness, some of my favorite cards. And for those of you that aren't aware, Despair is a card that has Siphon 1 as part of its cost, and then your opponent discards a card at random. So, I do like that they don't get to choose. That way they can't save their best card, all their cards are up for grabs. Then it's also got the same effect as a Fort Burst, however you do not have to pay the cost, which is really awesome. And speaking of Fort Bursts, there are 22 Fort Bursts in this deck, so that is quite a lot, so you're bound to hit at least 3 or 4, assuming you get lucky. I mean, it is possible that you hit none. The next up, we got 4 the Litanies of Alberts. Like I said, this is a control deck, and I don't want my opponent to have any creatures on the field or be able to do anything, so I felt like 4 the Litanies was an absolute necessity. And it is just a really amazing card. And then following up with that same logic, I've got 3 Death Traps. I did have to cut out one of my favorite ambushes, Kingslayer B, in order to play this card, but I felt like since I had so much destruction, I didn't want my opponent to have anything on the field, and I felt like Death Trap was going to be more effective in this deck than Kingslayer B would be. However, I do really like Kingslayer B, and it hurt me a lot to take it out. So that wraps up all the black cards. Pretty simple. I mean, we don't have a lot of really amazing black cards yet, so it's just all the best ones right now, aside from Albert and Shadowcrest. And Shadowcrest is one that I would love to put in here if I had the room. But let me know down below what you guys think I should take out to add in some of those cards that I had mentioned. But now moving on to the green cards. First up, we got 2 Falthalas, just a really amazing 1-drop, and it is the only 1-drop that I'm playing. So, I think 1-drops are, I think you should have them, just in case you have that one extra resource that you need to play. And then, since I am playing green, and I chose green because I wanted to ramp up my resources as fast as I could, so that I could play Flesh Shredder as fast as I could. So I am playing my typical ramp cards. If you've watched my deck profiles before, it's pretty much the same core that I always use. So 4 Fleetwing Sprites. Then I've got 3 copies of Red Fang. I did want to make room for a 4th just because it does have that 4 attack and the deck is kind of lacking in power, but I just couldn't find the room for it. I felt like not Flesh Shredder. Wow, I'm blanking on the name. Sinister Festering Stringman. I felt like he was just a better option, so that I had advantage. And also, Red Fang only functions within your first 3 turns, and I believe I've said this before, but the maximum number of times you can get his effect off is twice, regardless of how you manage to do it, simply because of the way the math works out. So, I felt like 3 was a good number in playtesting previous decks, so that's what I'm sticking with here. Next up, I've got 2 Mischievous Sprites. Ambush removal, pretty simple. I did end up taking out 1 Eleanor because I needed to make room for other stuff, and with Mischievous Sprite being an immediate advantage, I felt like that was better than Eleanor, although I think Eleanor is better in the long run. So, I may end up taking 1 Mischievous Sprite out to put in 1 Eleanor and just see if there's one that I prefer over the other. But for now, it's just the 2 Mischievous Sprites. Then we got the 2 Kingslayer B. Like I said earlier, it's a really amazing ambush, and I was sad to take 2 copies out, but I think Death Trap is a better option in this deck. Next up, a card I typically don't play, and normally wouldn't advise people to play, is Leilania's Call. But the reason I'm playing this one is so that I can more easily get Flesh Shredders out of my hand. If my opponent rams into this as a Fort Burst, I can summon Flesh Shredder, and then they have to discard 2 on their turn. So, really gives me a great advantage getting a creature on board and being able to discard 2 of their cards. And I also made sure to keep my count of 3-cost blue and black creatures relatively high, just so that this was never a dead card in my hand. And then, I don't think I'm playing any 4-cost green creatures. Yeah, it's all 3 costs, So I might stick in that Eleanor just for that extra power, but I don't think Leilania's Call will be a dead card in my hand. And then finally for the green spells, 2 Nature's Touch. Simply for the same reason as playing Cavalier, in case Bloody Baroness or Flesh Shredder would end up getting destroyed, I can summon it back and get their effect off again. So that was one that I made sure was in this deck. I wanted to make sure that Nature's Touch was in here. So that wraps up all of the green cards. And now moving on to the blue cards, which is by far the lowest count in here at only 10 cards. So first up, we got 1 Merchant of Scrolls. This was initially at 2, but the way that I was deck building, I had 1 extra sleeve for a Cavalier, and then I needed to take something else out for the second copy of Cavalier, and I felt like Cavalier was going to offer more than Merchant of Scrolls could. But I do like Merchant of Scrolls because it is able to kind of cycle through your cards and make sure you can hit your Flesh Shredders and your Bloody Baronesses. So I'm going to test it out at 1 and see how it works for me. Then I've also got 1 Play-Doh. I started out this build with 3 copies of them simply because I wanted to play really controlling with 3 Death Traps, 4 Kingslayer Bees, and then 2 to 3-ish Nature's Touch. But as I started to deck build, I realized I was putting more Fort Bursts in, so I decided to focus on that rather than the ambushes. But I felt like keeping the 1 Play-Doh in just in case I have multiples of them, and then if not, I have Fleetwing Sprite to get out of my hand, I have Merchant of Scrolls, I have Cavalier, I have a lot of stuff to discard it, so if it's not really doing anything in my hand, I do have options to get rid of it, and this will be the better option simply because it doesn't offer me anything. So I think it's going to make good situations really good and will not harm you in any bad situations. Now, those are the only 2 blue creatures I play. For blue spells, I play 4 Rejuvenates. This is one card that, this is the only reason I'm playing blue. I was really torn. I spent like 15 minutes debating whether or not I was actually going to be playing blue in this deck, simply for this card. What it came down to was I wanted that extra resource ramp, and I also wanted the card advantage. I wanted to be able to draw cards. So I was debating between playing this and playing like a Replenish the Ranks, Teriel, yellow, or even going another way and just playing like yellow draw cards that would let me cycle through, such as Sanctuary Enforcer or Bountiful Angel, anything like that. But ultimately it came down to I wanted the resources, so I felt like this was going to be the best for me. Might end up taking 1 or 2 out to play around with Dismantle for extra draw, but I think Rejuvenate is the card that I want, at least for right now. This is one that may come out for a different spell. And if this comes out, the rest of the blue spells are coming out, or the rest of the blue cards, and I'll be playing with either a different color, or I'll run another black banner and run all the cards that I wanted to. And then the final 2 cards that I'm playing are 2 Shield Breakers. This is one of the last additions that I made to the deck, and I put this one in because I didn't have a lot of powerful creatures. Bloody Baroness is my strongest, tied with Red Fang and Stringman, and they only have 4 attack, so if my opponent gets really lucky and continuously rolls 6s, I'm not going to have any way to deal with them. So I put the 2 Shield Breakers in simply for that purpose. I'm not too concerned about the black 5 to 6 effect, however, that is a really nice bonus. But if I do end up taking blue out, maybe I'll put in like an Address Disdain, and even talking about that now, that does sound like a nice choice, but I think Rejuvenate just offers too much for this deck. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this down below, and please offer any suggestions so that I can make changes and we all can learn from that. And as always, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any future content, and follow me on Twitter because I am trying to be more active on there, and the more active you guys are towards me, I'm sure the more that active I will be. So, yeah, thanks for checking this out, and we did get a ton of spoilers early this morning for Oath of Blood, so all those videos will come soon. So, yeah, as always, thanks for watching.